afternoon. I'm Chris Scherer, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers and the co-host of this month's episode of the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly meeting usually held on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals with about 5,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. The host of today's SBE WEBxtra is SBE board member Kirk Harnack, who is also the chair of the SBE Social Networking Committee. Good afternoon, Kirk.
Good afternoon, Chris, and good to see you. The last time I saw you was in lovely Las Vegas, right?
Lovely. Did you do the air quotes? I didn't see them if you did. So.
Lovely Las Vegas. We were at the national meeting and the membership meeting. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, we had our annual membership meeting and several committees met, board of directors met, had a member reception as well. So it was a fun time for all and a good return after the 2-year hiatus of missing or canceled or postponed shows. So,
and in case
back in the swing, it seems.
Yeah, and in case you being members watching this podcast, if you happen to miss, we did broadcast live, and it's in the form of a podcast now on the YouTube channel, that membership meeting. So if you want to see that, you can certainly go have a look at it.
Yeah, SBE.org/YouTube, and then go to the WEBxtra, and you'll find it there.
Chris, on today's meeting, we have something. Things never stay the same. Never change the same. We have something new. Some time ago, our longstanding SBE counsel, our attorney, Chris Imlay, decided to put on some more comfortable clothes and retire his position from SBE, helping us out for many years. And so there was a search committee was formed, and we found us some new attorneys. Of course, who could replace Chris Imlay? So it took apparently taking more than one attorney to replace Chris, and we're very delighted to have that attorney, or one of the attorneys, on today's show. So I want to introduce to everyone Coe Ramsey. Coe Ramsey with Brooks Pierce, and Coe, welcome in. It's good to see you. Tell us a little bit about Coe Ramsey.
Great. Thanks to be here.
You're part of this law firm, Brooks Pierce, and there's several other names involved. You guys do other communication law, is that right?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we are so Brooks Pierce is a 120 some odd year old law firm. We represent a host of clients. We have a particular emphasis. There's a group of us, about 10 or so of us, who have a particular emphasis on broadcast and media matters. And so I'm part of that group, and my partner, Stephen Hartzell, who can't be with us today, is also part of that group. And we are just beyond honored to succeed Chris and to represent the SBE. So I'm pleased to be with you today, and thanks very much for having me.
Well, we're going to be talking with you in a few minutes after Chris's member update. And I've been very pleased to have been in a number of meetings with you, Coe, and with Stephen Hartzell, who also is now counsel of record for us. And we also got to hear from you during our SBE Board of Directors meeting in Las Vegas that we had. You guys appeared to us remotely and gave us a SBE Regulatory Council report. We're going to be going over some of those issues and kind of updating our members here on this podcast as to where things stand in various regulatory matters, and also get you introduced to everyone. But right now, Chris Scherer has a member update for us. Chris?
That's right. This is your SBE member update for May 16, 2022. The next live webinars by SBE is tomorrow, May 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The topic is 2022 CBNT and CBNE Study Topics Module 4. It's part of the 8-part series to help you prepare for the SBE CBNT and CBNE exams. Wayne Pacina covers several key areas of study in IT in the broadcast environment. Module 5 of the series will be streamed on June 9th. Also next month on June 23rd, another new webinar series begins, Introduction to Successful Troubleshooting. Taking the Next Step begins with Module 1. Dan Fogel, founder and former CEO of DNF Controls, leads the series. For information on these and all the webinars by SBE, go to sbe.org/webinars. The next SBE certification exam window at local chapters is in June. The application deadline for that exam session has already passed, but you can still apply to take an SBE certification exam during the August window. That application deadline is June 10. If a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or just not possible because of in-person restrictions, private proctoring is available. For more information on SBE certification, it's all online at sbe.org/certification. And the annual SBE membership drive began March 1st and runs until the end of this month, May. When you recruit new members, you not only help grow the SBE, but you could win prizes for your efforts. The grand prize is a trip to the SBE National Meeting in the fall. Even if you don't win a prize in the drawing, each approved new member application you sponsor will earn you $5 off your 2023 membership dues, up to $25. If you recruit 3 or more regular or associate members or 1 sustaining member, you'll also receive an upgrade to the SBE Member Plus for the remainder of the 2022 membership period. Applications must be received at the SBE National Office between March 1st and May 31st of 2022 to be eligible. Get more information at sbe.org/drive. And the annual SBE compensation survey is still open, but your time is running out to participate, and we need your participation. The more people who respond, the better the data will be. Survey results are free to all SBE members. Look for the final report in July, but be sure to take the survey now. You can do so by going to sbe.org/survey. And that is your SBE member update for May 16th, 2022.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. And Chris is going to hang in here and be along with us for the rest of the show, as he often is, usually is, to add any questions or comments that he might have. Well, as I mentioned, we're talking with Coe Ramsey, and Coe is a member of Brooks Pierce law firm, and he is our part of our team. We have a team of at least 2 here, Coe and Stephen Hartzell, the SBE Regulatory Counsel. So, Coe, first of all, if you could just kind of give us a little bit about yourself. How in the world are you qualified to represent some legal matters or file proceedings or file comments on proceedings on behalf of the SBE? Tell us about that.
Yeah, Kirk, I wonder that every day. How am I qualified to do anything? No, I'll give a little bit of background on myself and sort of how I got from there to here. So I grew up. So let me back up. So I've been practicing law for about 23, 24 years now, all with Brooks Pierce. I came to Brooks Pierce right out of law school. And I will say I went to law school with a very, very targeted focus as to what my interests were at the time and what I wanted to do in a legal profession. And all of that started when I was probably a sophomore in high school, when I became fascinated by radio and by DJing. I grew up as a mobile and nightclub disc jockey, but I found out that was somewhat difficult to do when you're only 15 or 16 years old, particularly if you wanted to work in nightclubs. And just frankly, by happenstance, although I will say I did really put a lot of hard work into it, I found myself on radio in the largest in Greensboro, North Carolina, in the Greensboro market, and on one of the largest and the top radio station in the market, and I was the mix show DJ, and so I did a drive time show where I provided beat mixed music, and I also did a program on the weekends called Club 102, where I was the DJ who did the mixing, the beat mixing of the records. And I will say from the moment I drove in, went to that radio station, went in, had my interview. I was just finishing my junior year of high school. And walking out of that radio station with the job in hand and driving home and hearing my name being promoted on the radio, I was hooked. I became absolutely hooked by broadcasting, by the power of broadcasting. And I will say there's nothing like being a senior in high school, being on the biggest radio station in the market. So I became hooked with the power of broadcasting. But that also led me to a lot of the technical sides of music production, where I became a music producer. I did a lot of remixing and editing, and spent a lot of time cutting tape with real razor blades and splicing it together like we used to do in the analog days, and making carts for the radio station and that kind of stuff. So I saw a lot of the technical side of how the station was operated. I saw a lot of the technical side of how music was created and how music was mixed into the control board. I also saw how, if I were doing a remote for the station, whether it was working in a nightclub that was being broadcast live, or whether I remember remotes where this would be great today, where we pumped free gas. I think it was, but our frequency was 102.5. And so at that time, we filled up your tank for $10.25, so for free. So that would be, I'm certainly welcome today. But at the remote, seeing how the signal, where I was DJing in the clubs or at a remote, and how that signal would make its way back to the control board at the studio, and then make its way to the mountain, or it really was a hill in our market where the tower was. So I became fascinated by all of that. Found myself in college, because my parents told me I had to go to college, majored in communication studies, because I didn't know what else I was going to do. But somehow found philosophy, the degree, and really fell in love with philosophy. And so I came out of undergrad with a dual major in communication studies and philosophy. Then I didn't know what I was going to do. Ultimately, that pointed me to law school. And going to law school, I had my checklist of, here are my passions. Here's what gets me excited about what I could do with the law degree. And I did not have any family members who were lawyers. I didn't really know any lawyers. All I knew was I was very interested in broadcasting, very interested in music, very interested in the technical side of that. That when I went to law school, I went from day one with the plan to practice and represent radio stations, TV stations, and others, including folks in the music business. And so I've just been very, very fortunate to have realized that dream I had when I went to law school, and to also realize it in a way, somewhat of a non-conventional way, because I have a national practice. I mean, our firm's clients are all over the country, and I've been able to have that practice, but also live where I love to live, which is in North Carolina. And so I'm beyond fortunate to have found Brooks Pierce when I graduated from law school eons ago, and to find a home right away to practice law for my entire career. And that's where I am now. And our firm, as mentioned, we represent broadcasters, radio stations, TV stations, and others in the media industries. And we have a team of about 8 to 10 lawyers in our firm. And we pretty much do every and anything for our broadcast clients. And those clients also include trade associations. So we represent numerous broadcast trade associations. So similar to our representation of SBE. And again, just feel very fortunate, and just so pleased that I'm able to have a professional career that aligns with my passions. I often tell folks that if I had had my druthers at that time when I was working at that radio station and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I would have said at that time I wanted to be a major label record producer. And I probably would have specifically said Madonna's a producer at that time. I'm also fortunate that my aspirations have changed since then. And but I also say that that part of the business requires not just skill from a technical perspective and from being able to work a mixer and that kind of stuff, but it also required a lot of a lot of talent and a lot of good luck, right place, right time type of situations. As to the talent, I sort of learned that while I could splice tape pretty well and mix music, I couldn't create music, and I was lacking in the talent abilities. And so that ultimately pointed me to law school as well, because if I wanted to stay in this business but have no talent whatsoever, all points directed me to law school.
We're talking to Coe Ramsey. He's with Brooks Pierce firm, and founded, wow, in how long ago was that? 1987, right? No, 1897. Holy cow.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So a lot of us that are involved in broadcasting, and I'm part owner of some radio stations, we tend to deal as broadcasters more with our FCC consulting engineer and not quite as much with legal counsel. And I guess sometimes I get do those roles ever overlap? An FCC consulting engineer, do they ever do any legal kind of work? And does a lawyer like yourself, do you ever do any engineering kind of work? How do you work with, and what do you do that's separate from my FCC consulting engineer?
Well, I can certainly affirm that I don't do engineering work. I have an aptitude where I understand, frankly, the basics of what I need to understand as far as an engineering matter and to advocate on a particular engineering issue. But I work 100% in conjunction with my clients' engineering staff, as well as their consulting engineers. So, but we do not have engineers on staff at Brooks Pierce. Again, we have a team of us who are comfortable with engineering matters, but we never take on an engineering matter without having an engineer partner by our side, and so that typically is in the range of in the nature of a consulting engineer. I can't really speak to whether consulting engineers practice law. Technically, they should not if they don't have a law license.
So one of the things that we're going to be talking about here, a few more specifics, is the topic of filing comments on FCC proceedings. And I guess one thing that I've always wondered is, okay, what do comments really do in an FCC proceeding? Are they, how seriously are comments taken? Do they change the course of a proceeding? When you file comments on behalf of the SBE, because SBE would, via the membership might have, certain attitude or thoughts or comments on a proceeding that's before the FCC. So you file these comments. What do you expect to happen? What should we expect to happen when comments are filed?
Well, so comments are a critical part of the legal framework of administrative practice. And so the FCC, being an administrative agency of government, is subject to the APA, which is the Administrative Procedures Act. And as part of any decision the FCC or any other administrative agency makes, they are obligated by law to seek comments. And when I say decisions, I mean particularly around changes to rules or adoption of new rules or changes to those rules. And so the FCC is obligated by law to put any rule change or new rule that's being proposed out for public comment. And that public comment will involve two phases. It involves an initial comment period, and then it will have a reply comment period. And during those two periods, comments are solicited from the public to help guide the FCC in making its decision. So the FCC is obligated by law to consider all the comments. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it's a popularity vote, right? I mean, if X number of comments favor one outcome and another number of comments favor another outcome, it doesn't mean the outcome with the most comments or the most votes, if you will, wins. But they are used. Comments are used, again, as a legal requirement that the FCC is to consider and evaluate in making reasoned decisions. The FCC and any other administrative agency under the APA is not allowed to make decisions that are arbitrary and capricious, and those are that's a legal buzzword that the courts refer to, arbitrary and capricious. And so comments are intended to inform decisions so that they are rational and make sense, and that the expert agency takes under consideration so as not to make decisions that are arbitrary and capricious.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess comments, the comment you made, the content of the comment is not going to be legally binding necessarily, but the FCC is absolutely required to consider comments that are put forth properly, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And I think if we have time, we'll talk about a current proceeding where the FCC may not have adequately considered all comments and got called out by the DC Circuit with respect to that.
And in fact, we're going to jump into that right now. I think first on my list to talk about, and I know that there's some things that are underway, but you can tell us some things about this 6 gigahertz band and potential encroachment on a broadcast auxiliary service band that is right in there as well. What is what's the issue at hand in the 6 gigahertz band?
Yeah, so in the 6 gigahertz band, we have broadcasters who operate broadcast auxiliary systems within those bands, on a licensed basis. The FCC recently has opened the 6 gigahertz band up for wireless broadband usages. So new 5G usages by wireless providers in the 6 gigahertz band, with the idea that usage would coexist with licensed usage, and in particular the broadcast auxiliary usages. In opening the 6 gigahertz band, the FCC has allowed for standard power devices and for indoor low power devices. In order to avoid interference with existing users, and in particularly broadcast auxiliary users, these devices are supposed to go through a coordination process. The standard power devices are to use what's known as an automated frequency coordination process. And that is a database check process based off licensed and fixed locations of incumbent users. The indoor low power devices, and you can think of these devices as the indoor Wi-Fi devices that general folks have, like I have sitting here at my desk. Those devices are supposed to use what's called a contention-based protocol, which is a more relaxed frequency coordination process where that device is required to listen before it speaks or before it talks on that frequency. And so, in theory, the indoor device will survey existing usages of the 6 gigahertz spectrum and listen to see what's available, and then jump on an available channel and use that available channel before it transmits. So that was adopted by the commission. It was the commission's decision to do that was appealed to the DC Circuit, and the DC Circuit largely upheld or did uphold the FCC's determination that those frequency coordination protocols were sufficient to avoid harmful interference. The DC Circuit, while upholding the FCC's decision, did notice that, or did flag that broadcasters had identified a concern about the use, specifically the use of contention-based protocol, listen before talk protocol, um, in and its effectiveness, particularly in the 2.4 gigahertz band, where we already have Wi-Fi devices, deployed widespread, that use this contention-based protocol. And the DC Circuit felt that the Commission did not adequately explore the concerns that were raised by broadcasters about the effectiveness of contention-based protocol in the 2.4 gigahertz band. And so the Commission, so the DC Circuit sent it back to the Commission and said, we uphold your decision on 6 gigahertz. However, we don't think you've adequately considered evidence with respect to whether contention-based protocol has worked and what broadcasters' experience has been with contention-based protocol in the 2.4 gigahertz. And so we are now in a comment period in this limited remand decision where the FCC has asked, does contention-based protocol work, and what has broadcasters' experience been with Wi-Fi interference in the 2.4 gigahertz band, and in particular around channels 8 and 9 of the 2.4 gigahertz band, with the thought that if would it make sense for there to be a sliver of the 6 gigahertz to be reserved specifically for broadcast auxiliary use? And so this proceeding is now open at the FCC. Comments are due next week on May 25th. And SBE is in the process of preparing comments. We are in the process of preparing them for SBE. And the essence of the comments based off of input from SBE members is that in our experience, particularly around channel 8 and channel 9 of the broadcast auxiliary spectrum and 2.4 gigahertz, is that contention-based protocol has failed to protect those services from harmful, and that interference is harmful and ongoing in the 2.4 gigahertz bands. So SBE will be filing comments on that point next week.
Contention based, and just from an engineering point of view, and I don't know all about this, but it's not hard to imagine that contention based spectrum protection schemes would all involve a device listening, not hearing any interference, go ahead and transmitting. And yet it may not hear some other device that actually is using that channel and might cause interference to that device. And before the show, we were talking about the possibility of broadcasters typically using gain antennas, and may in fact pick up the desired signal and an undesired signal. The undesired one being unaware, if you will, of the desired signal that's the channel that's in use. And I find it interesting. I'm sorry, Coe, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, your comment made me think of another point that not in this band, but particularly in the band where our TV station clients use Doppler radars, and Doppler radars are a perfect example of a transmission by the radar that that sweeps around in a circle, and so it may sweep past a site, and the Wi-Fi device, after the radar has swept by, doesn't see it anymore. And so the Wi-Fi device thinks, oh, okay, great, this frequency is available. And then when the radar comes back and sweeps, it hits that device. And so we have seen with some of our problems, so really systemic issues involving Doppler devices, just because of the nature of the way Doppler works.
Yeah, they transmit continuously, but not in the same direction continuously. They move,
exactly.
They'll hit that place over and over and over again. Yeah, that's a really good good example. And the other thing I was going to bring up is I realized that we're filing comments in favoring some reserved area that would not be subject to other devices using signal contention. But could such a scheme as that actually work in reverse, such that, well, hey, our contention scheme doesn't have to be that good because broadcasters have their own protected area. So we'll make our contention protection scheme only this good, get the FCC to agree with that, because broadcasters have their own little safe space up there that we can't touch anyway. I just wonder if that actually would be counterproductive in the long run. If not that I know all the issues, but it just seems like it could lower the bar for performance of the contention-based system, knowing that there's an area that's kind of a safe spot. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's clearly a good point, and that's similar to another issue that we had some breaking news on last week around reserve channels for Wi-Fi for white space devices and for wireless mics, where the question there was, and this proceeding had been pending for some time, which is whether or not a vacant TV channel should be maintained in every market for wireless mics and TV white space devices. And the point you made there, I think, could also be made here, right? I mean, if you were to reserve a channel here, it's really not as necessarily as interference, but I mean, it takes, reserving a channel takes away usage that broadcasters could otherwise use with maximization or channel change petitions and that kind of stuff. And so last week, in a proceeding that both SBE and NAB filed concurring comments on, the FCC did deny Scheurer's and Sennheiser's petitions, those wireless mic manufacturers, to reserve or preserve a vacant channel for those devices, which the FCC had rejected. Those parties filed petitions for reconsideration, and both SBE and NAB and others filed in support of the Commission's decision declining to preserve vacant channels for those devices.
I think it's interesting. We, Chris and I, to a lesser degree yourself, we understand a little bit about RF. Certainly our audience does. And it's interesting. We're kind of in favor of systems that are smart. We do want people to be able to use spectrum efficiently as possible for as many uses as possible. I mean, it doesn't do anybody any good for lots of swaths of spectrum to go unused and nobody can use them. So, sharing can be good. We got to make sure the technology actually makes it effective, so that you can borrow my rake, and then your neighbor doesn't return it, right? Or returns it and it's all bent up. So it makes you not want to loan the rake anymore, right? So that's kind of like spectrum. Use it, but if you cause me interference, I was here first, and I would think that maybe my use is higher and better, whatever it might be. It is interesting that as broadcasters, in many ways, turn more and more to commercial IP over RF solutions, like maybe using existing, telco and wireless carrier infrastructure, that maybe what was reserved for broadcasters becomes less important. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that, we do a lot of things now as broadcasters using other infrastructure from other industries, mostly telco and, wireless communications. Hey, I guess we got some other topics, Coe, to look at here. I want to make sure Chris Scherer is invited to jump in here with any questions if I'm forgetting something, Chris. I noticed, Coe, and I don't know if you can speak to this for a second. T-Mobile is requesting an STA, special temporary authority, for 6 gigahertz tests. Coe, do you have any comments for broadcasters about T-Mobile's activities here?
Yeah, so that's occurring in Northern Virginia. It's occurring in some other places throughout the country. But those T-Mobile and I believe others are in the process of rolling out 6 gigahertz networks within the 6 gigahertz band, using basically these new rules. As I mentioned, the standard devices have to use a automated coordination system that involves the maintenance of a database and the maintenance of fixed locations and that kind of stuff. And that process of creating the database and the database administrator is underway, but not fully implemented at this point. And so these STAs are a way for T-Mobiles and others to start operating these standard power devices pursuant to the STAs in markets to go ahead and roll out. What I would recommend broadcasters do is just be cognizant that that is happening. The potential interference to our BAS, our broadcast auxiliary operations in the 6 gigahertz, to the extent you are starting to receive new interference, particularly if you're in one of these STA markets, these new networks could potentially be the source of that interference. And these STAs also include are required to include what we call I think a kill contact. And so if you are experiencing new interference at the 6 gigahertz, that may be the source, and you can look at the filings to determine who to call right away to address that interference.
Something reading over the report that as a member of the board of directors, I got to read over your report. And I think it's so interesting that we have a report from our counsel, from you, talking about 2 gigahertz band in coordination with the Department of Defense and with NASA and Virgin Galactic and launches and things like that. Everybody wants to share frequencies. Can you? We don't have to go into deep specifics, but broadcasters used to think, or used to be able to say, "Hey, this little slice of spectrum is mine for my ENG truck," or at least maybe I have to coordinate it with the other TV station across town. But now it seems like everybody wants a piece of the spectrum action. I guess there's no end in sight for everybody wanting to use spectrum that perhaps used to be exclusively for one business or another, or an agency or another, and television and to some extent radio are suffering from that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Kirk, and you really see this in the 2 gigahertz band. That's where historically, we have had our broadcast auxiliary operations concentrated more so in the 2 gigahertz band. I will say your comment on broadcasters' migration to other technologies, particularly technologies using cellular and wireless networks to provide the same type of functionality as we have historically used the 2 gigahertz to do, I think, just it enhances the risk that 2 gig is up for grabs. And you mentioned a handful of concerns and issues that we monitor for the SBE, in the 2 gigahertz. So in addition to the deployment of AWS4, as we're seeing by Dish Network here in recent months, there are also the SBE coordinates the use of this frequency with the Department of Defense for military use and testing in the 2 gigahertz band. And so SBE serves as the national coordinator to coordinate usages by DoD in the 2 gigahertz band. And we also see risk here relating to commercial space launch usages. There is a proceeding right now that would permit the use of 2 gigahertz, for that industry. And we continue to see usage in the 2 gigahertz for Earth exploration satellite services. So there's a lot of activity going on in 2 gigs that, as you rightfully mentioned, has sort of historically been ours. With all of these, and I guess I'll just add that with all of these encroachments, if you will, the FCC generally has viewed broadcast auxiliaries as the incumbent that has to be protected, and that just really increases the need for effective frequency coordination in these markets. In the 2 gig, we do have priority, we do have protection, and these other usages have to be coordinated with us and have to be protected. And so it just emphasizes sort of the importance of when you receive a frequency coordination notice, making sure the appropriate personnel at your station is looking at that and considering the potential impact of the proposed use on your actual 2 gigahertz usages.
We're talking with Coe Ramsey. He's a legal counsel with Brooks Pierce, the full name Brooks Pierce, McLendon, Humphrey and Leonard, LLP. They're out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Is that right? Raleigh?
That's right.
And Coe is our guest today on the SBE WEBxtra. Chris Scherer is along as well. Chris, I'm going to take myself a tiny little break here and ask you to come in. And is there anything that we've talked about so far that you think needs a little extra questioning on, or can we move on?
Well, can I open by saying no further questions at this time, Your Honor? At this point, you've kind of covered everything I was thinking about at this point. Unless
Chris, I will say that when I was learning to be a lawyer, and now when we train lawyers, and I actually taught at a law school for 7 years, and so when I would talk to my students, I always told them, I was like, look, the best lawyer is the lawyer who knows when to shut up. Once you've made the point, once you've gotten your point across, and particularly if the judge agrees with you, you don't need to say.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice all around. I was going to ask if there's any crystal balling things on the horizon that you've perhaps got your eyes on that broadcasters might want to be aware of for the future.
Well, I mean, this is not really crystal balling, but I will say a very large part of my practice around for TV, and let me give you, I'll do a crystal ball for TV, and I'll do a crystal ball for radio, both of which are really pretty easy balls here. But on the TV side, I spend a large amount of time on next gen TV or ATSC 3.0 as that technology is being deployed throughout the country. And I'm sure most of you are aware that of this new television broadcast standard. It allows there's a lot of interesting things about it, but in short, it is an IP transmission based standard, and so by deploying 3.0, a TV station is now basically broadcasting an IP-based signal. And so anything you can do over the internet as far as transmitting an IP, you can do with a 3.0 signal. And so I think that's just really exciting to me from a technical standpoint about really the unlimited possibilities, not only for audiovisual programming, but also for data casting and data use cases that would particularly be beneficial in a broadcast scenario. And so I think to me, next gen is very exciting. I have many of my clients are on the front lines of deploying 3.0 technology. It's a bit complicated because it's not the licensing framework and the way the FCC has adopted 3.0 is based off of a voluntary market deployment. So the FCC is not requiring TV stations to convert to 3.0, but the FCC is allowing TV stations to convert to 3.0. It's complicated though, because unlike the analog to digital transition, where TV stations were provided a whole nother 6 megahertz channel in order to simulcast both in analog and in digital, we do not have that spectrum capacity or spectrum available to us this time around. Rather, it requires very complicated market coordination among TV stations in a market where one station or two would convert their technical facilities to 3.0, but the FCC doesn't allow you just to flash cut to 3.0. You can't cease using or transmitting a 1.0 signal. So as part of the market coordination, a station flips on to 3.0, it becomes what we refer to as a 3.0 lighthouse. And its 1.0 programming then has to be hosted by another station in the market who remains operating in 1.0. So we have in each market where we have deployed 3.0 for clients, one of the first steps is to negotiate hosting arrangements among all the stations in the market who want to participate. One of the challenges that quickly became apparent, I lose track with the pandemic, but it was maybe 2 years ago, was that the licensing framework had a little hole in it. The licensing framework did not contemplate what we refer to as non-simulcast, multicast 1.0 stations. Let me explain. So when a station converts its facility to 3.0, not only, so the FCC requires that that station find a way through another host in the market to maintain its primary signal in 1.0. That's all that's required is the FCC requires that you maintain your primary signal in 1.0. But as a practical and as a matter of market and preservation of services to viewers, we also want to maintain our 1.0 multicast program. We don't want to disenfranchise viewers in connection with this transition. And so when we convert to 3.0, we want to maintain not only our primary multicast signal, but also our primary signal. We also want to maintain our multicast signals in 1.0. And the way that typically works in a market is that's going to require there to be more than one 1.0 host. So if I convert to 3.0, I have to find a host for my 1.0. I might put my primary on station A, and I might put my multicast on station B, or maybe even station C. So the upshot is I've got my 1.0 programming spread across multiple 1.0 stations. The FCC's rules did not contemplate the licensing of those multicast. And that created some concerns and questions as stations were looking to participate in 3.0 market deployments, because if your multicast is not licensed to you, but broadcast on another station, there can become liability questions as to who's responsible for the program. Is it the originating programmer, or is it the host station that is not the programmer, but that's hosting that other multicast? So the FCC, and just real quick, another issue that teed up was non-commercial stations, and the question about how non-commercial stations can be plugged into the jigsaw puzzle here, because if a non-commercial station is hosting a non-simulcast multicast of a commercial station, does that now create a problem under the non-commercialization rules? The upshot of all of that is that the FCC staff very much appreciated the concern, appreciated the issue, and adopted a temporary framework for special temporary authorities. And so markets have been able to deploy using these special temporary authorities that clarify the questions around these multicast channels. In connection with that, a proceeding was launched, and the proceeding is now well underway at the FCC. The comment periods are closed, but the hope and expectation is that we're not too far away from the FCC officially codifying the licensing framework that accounts for these non-simulcast multicast stations. So we anticipate that. I don't have a specific timing, of course, but we're very optimistic that will be forthcoming. So that's on the next Gen TV ATSC 3.0 side of things. Also, just on that point, real quick, there's likely to be a proceeding forthcoming around what we refer to as a substantially similar requirement. And so, with respect to the 1.0 primary signal, the FCC's rules currently require that primary signal be substantially similar to what's being broadcast in the 3.0 simulcast. Basically, as to the programming needs to be the same. That requirement is scheduled to sunset next July of 2023. And so there's now some question and discussion over whether that sunset should indeed continue to apply or whether that requirement should be extended further. I'll just say the broadcasters in general support the sunset as it currently is written, which would allow more flexibility in programming, as and further advance the 3.0 deployments. Sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful on 3.0 on the TV side. I'll be a little bit more succinct on my crystal balling for the radio side. So this week on the Commission's open meeting agenda, which is scheduled for Thursday, May the 19th, a matter is in the agenda around the use of computer modeling for FM directional antennas. And so it is expected that on Thursday, or maybe even before, if the Commission decides to move forward in advance of the meeting on this matter, that the Commission is going to allow FM directionals to use computer modeling. There'll be some limitations on that. The rules are likely to limit modeling to manufacturers only, meaning that only the antenna manufacturers will be able to prepare the computer models. But the FCC is likely not to require any specific software program to be used. So that's forthcoming. Again, we expect to see that Thursday, if not before.
Coe, this FCC allowing of modeling of FM directionals, that replaces the requirement to do range testing for directionals.
That's
Is
right.
that right? Okay.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So if you order, if you're an FM station and you need a directional FM antenna, you may be able to purchase one. I would assume manufacturers might be able to offer a lower price or increase their profit, one or the other, because they would no longer have to range test your antenna. They could model its behavior on the tower that it's going to be mounted on, I would guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
Let's see. Oh, I had another question. We talked about the next gen and the FM. AM revitalization. Seems like we've been using that phrase for a dozen years or more now. What's happening in that world of AM revitalization?
Well, so as far as I'm aware, Kirk, there's nothing imminent. Most of that proceeding has seen its way through. I guess I maybe if I could turn the question back on you guys, is there something in particular as far as AM revitalization that you would like to see? I will say just anecdotally, maybe a little bit more than anecdotally, certainly the FM, the ability to use FM translators and the windows that created opportunities for AM stations to start using FM translators, particularly the daytime AMers, has been a huge boom and has been very helpful. Again, to a lot of my clients, and so I think that was a very welcome change in the FCC's rules, and one that I think has had a lot of impact in markets. I mean, I know I've got several small market broadcast clients who being able to have an FM translator and simulcast on an FM translator, particularly at night, has been a lifesaver for them, and in some cases has really revitalized the radio market entirely in that market, where you now have stations that have always been compelling in AM, but were missing listeners on the FM dial, are now finding listeners, and again, in small markets, the fact that it's a translator, its coverage is often pretty good to cover what's needed in that market.
I'm maybe the oldest one here. I don't know if Chris would agree with this. Now, I think AM revitalization involves bringing back AM shock jocks, Paul Harvey, and Lowell Thomas. But I'm pretty
That's
old.
the rest of the story,
That's
right?
a tall order.
It's a tall order. That's right. Oh, we have been through a bunch of topics here. Something that I'm a little scratching my head about is this this AWS deployment of 5G. Could you, maybe that's, the headlines have just missed me. What does that involve?
Yeah, so sorry, I think I touched on that
You did.
earlier in our discussion this afternoon, but really didn't hit it as direct on as we probably should, because it is a very important and timely issue at the moment. Dish Network is in the process of rolling out its 5G network, and it's required to do that. Dish had made a commitment to the FCC to roll out a 5G network within 20% of U.S. households by middle of June, I think June 14. And so Dish is in the process of working towards satisfaction of that condition. And they're in the process of launching, in connection with that, they're in the process of launching an AWS Advanced Wireless Services 4 network, which would be in the 2 gigahertz band, and specifically, I think 2020 megahertz for uplinks and 2180 and 2200 megahertz for the downlinks. As I mentioned when we briefly were discussing 2 gigahertz matters, our broadcast auxiliary stations as incumbents are protected, and these new AWS systems are required to not only protect us, but also to initiate, go through a frequency coordination process before commencing operation. And so Dish is in the process of doing that. They are in the process and have been for about a month now, sending out frequency coordination notifications to stations that operate near the sites that they intend to deploy AWS 4 on. We understand, again, anecdotally, I'm not an engineer, but I understand from engineers that this, while this is not directly, in the same exact band as our 2 gigahertz operations, that it's close enough, and that in particular, if these AWS transmitters are located within 10 miles or so of our broadcast auxiliary receive sites, that there very well may be some interference. So I would I want to flag this for your members to make sure that they keep an eye out for these notifications. And it's probably even worth going back and looking in your email archives over the past month, or in your email spam, because one thing that's been a little odd about this process is that these notifications are coming via email, and they are flagged in the email system as low priority. So, where you can send an email and say this is high priority, these emails are actually flagged as low priority. And so there's certainly a risk that folks at your stations who may be receiving these emails may be disregarding them, or may, because of the flag, they may be inadvertently ending up in some folder because of the low priority flag. Frankly, it's probably the first time anyone's ever used the low priority flag. So I do think it's important to be on the lookout for these. Go back to see if maybe you've missed some, and then review very closely. You may find that some of the information is lacking, maybe around site locations, power levels, and that kind of stuff. And so if you do get a notification and you feel like you don't have sufficient information, you can certainly reach out to your SBE coordinator, and I encourage you to reach out to your SBE coordinator who has resources who can help you respond to those PCNs or public coordination notifications.
I'd like to actually jump in on that. We posted a news and headlines item on this topic, and just a quick synopsis: the SBE does recommend that all licensees generate a paper trail, in this case the emails, just in case the potential interference arises. And if some does, the stations need to notify ComSearch or Dish Network in writing immediately. The SBE does have a sample letter that stations, SBE members can adapt for their stations. Contact the SBE National Office is probably the simplest way, and we'll make sure we can get that letter to you.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much. We're talking to Coe Ramsey. He's a part of the new legal counsel team for SBE since Chris Imlay retired. Coe and also Stephen Hartzell. Stephen was scheduled to be with us today, but he had a non-cancelable meeting pop up, so he's not with us. But Coe is handling all the duties, and I got to meet and listen to Coe's report at the recent SBE Board of Directors meeting that we had in Las Vegas back during the NAB convention. Coe, we're about out of time here, and I think we've covered everything that we made a note of. Is there any last thought that you'd like to leave us with before we have to go?
Well, I mean, the only thought I've got, Kirk, is that when we jumped on, I told you I had a little bit of power left in my earphones. I've got 1% now, so this timing couldn't be better.
Perfect.
Yeah, leave it to the technical folks to get that.
It looks like you'll need the charger soon. It may have run out right there. All right. Yeah. Oh, it looks like maybe you're still there after all.
Oh, no.
All right.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. Not sure what happened.
Coe Ramsey, Coe, you've been with us for the last hour. Appreciate you, and thanks for your work and with the SBE and your reports to our board of directors. And we'll try to keep our membership informed as to what you're doing through programs like this. Love to have you back on again when situations warrant.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. And Chris Scherer, I'll turn it back over to you for a quick wrap up. Thanks, Chris.
Very good. Thanks again. This has been the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. We present this monthly, and we hope you'll join us each time. We'll post the replay on our YouTube channel, usually within a day. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine, whom we thank for the support. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. If you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE WEBxtra qualifies you for 1/2 point in Category G, that's attendance. It's just like attending a local chapter meeting. And that does it for this installment of the SBE WEBxtra from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks to our guest, Coe Ramsey, and on behalf of Kirk Harnack, we will see you next month.